Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk, and it is good to talk. People know me because I produced this book, and that's how it all started, about my good friend Tony McGurn, his life story from 1941 up until recently. It's also available on audio. You can buy it on Amazon. I'm sponsored by Liffey Van Lines, moving company here in New York City. They have a big birthday coming up. They'll be 50 years old next year. Happy birthday to Liffey. I always have a special guest. Today is no exception. Her name is Lisa Larkin, and she is a registered nurse. And I want to know all about her story, because everybody has a story and it's good to talk. Lisa, hello and good morning. How are you?
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me.
So where were you born, and tell us about your background?
I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was raised in Washington State. And that's where I had all my three kids in Washington State, and they were actually raised in Pennsylvania. So I've kind of been all over the place.
Okay, and you are a nurse. So did somebody in your family, I always ask this question of everybody, like did someone in your family, your mother, your aunts, or someone else, did they come from that profession, or are you brand new?
It was brand new. I had an uncle who was a nurse, but I wasn't that close to him. It was just something I wanted to do after my children were born. I was just very impressed with the way the nurses were in the hospital with the babies and myself.
Right. So it kind of came from a caring environment that you thought this is good and you want to be part of it and help. So tell me about education, I guess. Like you had to go to college.
Yeah, well, I went to college for 2 years, then ended up getting married and pregnant, took a lot of time off, and then I went back to school when my children were young to get my nursing degree. And I had my associates for a while, and then I ended up going back to get my bachelor's of science in nursing through University of Phoenix.
Congratulations and well done for that. That's important. So your first part of your career, your first job in a hospital was when and where?
I worked for a hospital in Pennsylvania in 2005, and I started out on a cancer unit, and then they switched me over to telemetry.
Mm-hmm.
And then, from there, I've done just about everything you can imagine in the hospital. I was a float nurse. I've been a travel nurse, and I've enjoyed every second of it.
Excellent. Yeah. I just want to mention one of my other guests was on here. He works in Zone Catering. He is a cancer research guy, Sergey Yakovlevich. You'll get him in my podcast. I mean, my listeners can refer back to him. That was an interesting podcast as well, because that deals more with, I guess, the before the cancer research. So let's talk now about recently, I guess, the big thing, of course, in the last few years was the COVID that started in the December 2019. And then in New York, we had the lockdown, which was in March 2020, 1 week before St. Paddy's Day. So where were you during all of that chaos?
I was actually living in Texas at the time. I had taken some time off of being a nurse. And when March came around, I had started putting my feelers out again to go back, because I knew they were going to need a lot of nurses. And I ended up going to Atlanta, to a field hospital there. Very unique experience. And from there, I had the opportunity to go to Curacao and work for 4 months at the hospital there during COVID.
Did you say a field hospital?
A field hospital in Atlanta, yes.
A field, you mean like MASH?
Well, kind of. It was in the convention center there.
Okay, it wasn't like out in the open.
Yeah, not like it wasn't the Big Ten. It was in the convention center.
Yeah, because MASH went on forever and ever as an interesting TV situation as well. Given that Vietnam, I had a guest on the other last week too, who had a photograph. We talked about photographs from Vietnam and how one picture can change the world. And that photographer was Ron Forrest was his name. He has a book published too about photographs from Iceland. So there you were in Atlanta at the beginning of the COVID crisis. Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit about that, the chaos, I guess. I'm using the word twice. But
actually, when I was there, the hospitals were very reluctant to give up any patients, because they were getting federal money for all the COVID patients. So we, at the time, only had about 12 patients for a 200-bed, unit that we had created. And they ended up closing that down. I can't remember exactly when, maybe the end of June they closed it down. And I know they had to reopen it because that's when they were, that summer they had so many COVID patients that the hospitals had to give some of them to other people to take care of.
Wow. Like I guess the numbers are startling. If we look at, from my research, 86 million people in the United States got COVID, and over 1 million people died from COVID. New York City, 2.5 million, with over 40,000 deaths. That's like 25% of New York City population got COVID at some point or other stage, and then 40,000 died. Unfortunately, funeral homes were overwhelmed. So, were you in Atlanta for the whole duration of the 2020?
No, I ended up going to Curacao and working for 4 months. I don't know if you know where Curacao is. It's near Aruba and Bonaire, in the Caribbean. So I was there working at the hospital, and when I was there, we had no COVID patients at all. We were there just, I guess, expecting to get COVID patients once they opened the country. But when I left there, I actually came here to New York City, and I was working as a school nurse during COVID, which was very interesting because if you remember, we had the red zone, the orange, the yellow zones. So anytime we were in any kind of zone, the schools would get shut down.
That was a serious time as well with the lockdown. I remember like at 4 o'clock in the evening or 4:30, all my neighbours, and including me, we would have the pots and pans out just to create awareness and respect for the nurses, the hard work they were doing at that time. Liffey was given huge discounts to nurses and doctors as a sign of respect as well during that time. So, what do you remember from 2020? Like, like there was panic of shortages of ventilators, as I remember, yeah?
Well, I remember that. It made me very sad to know that people weren't getting what they needed, and it was hard. It was hard to watch. It was really hard to watch, knowing that my fellow healthcare workers were put in these situations that were heartbreaking, really.
And was there a reason for that? Like, was it just like sheer logistics, like that the products weren't able to be manufactured fast enough, or?
Well, I think it had to do with the logistics and the manufacturing. I mean, both, really. I think that we could have done a better job of sharing around the country with these kind of resources than we did, and also you're right, there just wasn't enough.
But when you say sharing, was it a situation where there was oversupply in one location and a shortage somewhere else?
That I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that there probably maybe would have been more somewhere. But I mean, hospitals.
In fairness, I think all things considered, I think they did an excellent job in controlling it and calming it and keeping it down. The information coming out was on a daily basis. It was very precise and exact. I know in March 20, I made a short little video myself because people were screaming about not being able to get a mask. And I was able to show them how to make a mask by cutting the sleeve off a t-shirt and just using it like a bandana. And it's effective. It was effective then, but then the marketing people who said, no, you must use a certain brand of mask, okay? And then, of course, the division came along then, people not wanting to wear a mask, and other people saying, don't wear it, wear it. Over such a serious situation as a pandemic, a health crisis, you would imagine that all of the people should be united to do the best for each other and everybody to reduce the spread. Like the Spanish flu was in 1918, and that killed, I think, between 30 and 40 million people worldwide. And they didn't have the resources or the technology at all. But, I guess they did the best they could, and that was before World War I. Then we had the AIDS crisis in 1980s, I guess, and that killed 36 million people worldwide. And it didn't get much political backing for a long, long, long time. I think in fairness to George Bush, after he had a sit-down dinner with Elton John, realized that this is serious and it's not just it's a virus that could spread anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
What's your views on that?
Oh, on the whole AIDS topic?
Yeah.
I was very young when that all started, and I feel like you're right. It was kind of covered over, brushed, whatever you want, the term you want to use. It was not taken seriously enough, and I know that a lot of lives were lost and a lot of lives are hurt, and I know there's still so much stigma around it all, and I've seen a lot of research and things out there now trying to destigmatize it and let people know that it is something that's treatable. And I know they have all those medications out now that you can take to help prevent it and to help those who do have it be undetectable.
Yeah.
So I think
going back again, like to, I think, not that I was not even born, but I remember people talking about in the 50s, probably 50s, 60s, like TB. And a lot of these viruses, like they have like commonalities, like they affect like the lungs or the throat, and then other parts of the body are affected. So it's like there was another one in, I think it was in Obama's time, that was caught very quickly and managed to be put under control, you know? And maybe this is where the COVID situation, I mean, not just USA, but maybe worldwide, could have been managed better too, in terms of lockdowns, medication, and care, you know, from on all sides, without politicians bickering about it. Like politicians aren't qualified doctors or nurses, and yet they act as if they know more about a pandemic. Like when you hear someone like to take a glass of Clorox, that's going to help solve my problem. It's ludicrous, really and truly. Any comment?
This is interesting. From the very beginning, I really, well, once vaccinations became available, I was watching the numbers all around the world to see, you know, what countries were vaccinating and what percentages. And there were a couple different jobs that had been posted to go and vaccinate in Africa, and then another one in near Australia. And I never did get to do either of those, but it always bothered me that these countries were not as vaccinated as us. And then people didn't realize that since they're not as vaccinated as us, that just leaves the coronavirus out there to mutate more and possibly become more deadly to the whole world if we're not, you know, vaccinating and taking care of everyone.
Yes. And the thing with a virus again is like the how it mutates, and then it's the people that aren't vaccinated and they get the corona, as you call it, COVID, and then another strain of it comes along. It's like, say, the common flu. There's a shot for that every year, and then there's various strains of the common flu. And ironically, during the COVID 2020, 21, and all that, by the sheer fact of people wearing the mask and practicing good hygiene, the flu rate came down, which makes you wonder if in previous years, if society had been practicing better hygiene, hand washing, simple stuff, that they would prevent the spread of the common flu itself. The common flu kills a lot of people, especially the elderly. Any view on that?
I agree completely. If people were better at their hygiene, and especially the hand hygiene, and in the winter time, you know, the not necessarily having to wear a mask with the flu, but covering their coughs better, using hand sanitizer when they're coughing. I think we could do a lot better as a society with that.
I mean, looking back to 2020 again, and like before, like the subway system in New York City. I don't mean the system, I mean the state of platforms. Like, it's like they weren't washed in 40 years. like the hygiene was like ridiculous. I mean, there's no bar or restaurant that would get away with what the basic train stations, like the filth was unbelievable. And it seemed like an environment to where a virus could just grow and expand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed. So where are you working currently in the medical field?
I am a quality control clinician at a city-run vaccination clinic.
Okay.
And we're actually getting ready to start vaccinating 6-month to 5-year-olds.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. Because I'm the forever optimistic person, and I do believe that science will win, you know? That's a slogan from Pfizer. Speaking in Pfizer have been in Ireland, I'm Irish, of course, since 1969, and Johnson & Johnson have been in Ireland for over 80 years. So a lot of good work from both of those companies have come out to help with this pandemic, you know, what else can you call it? And come winter again, flu season will be around again, and who knows, another strain of COVID, you know, it's not like something that goes away, or does it go away?
It's not going to go away. I mean, I know that our former president said it's just going to go away, but it's just like the flu virus. I mean, it's not going to go away. It's only going to become something that we're going to have to live with and probably get our annual COVID shots, just like the flu shot. Yeah.
That's interesting you say that. I recently have come across people, there was a flu shot for the flu, then there was a shot for shingles, I believe, a shot for pneumonia. Like, so vaccinations have been around. It's not like that there's something totally new. And some crazy kids saying, oh, there's a chip in it and they'll know all your information. I don't know how anyone could put a chip into a syringe, but that's kind of baffling, you know?
Yes.
So that's totally crazy. But I always give a quotation, and today I'm going to give a quotation from, let me see, it's from John Keats. He was a poet. He died at the age of 25 years old. And he said, beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. And then I'll also quote Jack Nicholson, who said, some people can't handle the truth. So I agree with both of those quotations.
Yeah.
So anything else you would like to add to our chat today?
No, just thank you so much for having me.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you, and I hope we raise some issues that my listeners hopefully will find interesting, and tune into the other podcasts that I did, the Cancer Research Guy, and the many other ones. There's about 30 different podcasts that are all interesting. My pleasure to have you as well, Lisa. Thanks for being on It's Good to Talk. It's always good to talk.
Thank you so much.
Keep working hard. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.